Okay, so good morning everyone, welcome back from after the break. Welcome to the Getting Girls Global Panel. I'm Professor Ruth Falconer from University of Aberdeen. I head up the Games Technology and Maths Division. Passionate about getting more girls and women into tech, and we'll hear about some of the initiatives as we proceed. I would love to introduce my fellow panellists. So I'm here with Sarah, Michelle and Dominica. So I'll pass over to Michelle to introduce herself.
Great, thanks Ruth. Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Rosario and I'm an engineering manager here at Zynga. I've been in the gaming industry over 10 years now, and previously I was serving as tech director and engineering manager for our applied AI division. I have recently transitioned over to lead engineering efforts on our Merge Dragons title, so excited to be here.
And over to Sarah.
Hi everybody, my name's Sarah Calverley. I work at Amazon Web Services. I've been in technology for over 15 years, incredibly passionate about getting girls and women into the tech space. And my role at the moment within Amazon Game Tech is Senior Business Manager for the UK and Ireland.
Excellent, thanks Sarah. And then over to you, Dominica.
Hello, my name is Dominika Urbańska and I'm Managing Director of the Association of Interactive Software Developers and Distributors Association in Poland, and which is operating since 2008, and I'm responsible mostly for educational campaigns at raising awareness of the responsible use of electronic entertainment and interactive media.
Great stuff. So thank you, and a special thanks to Michelle for joining us all the way from San Francisco and it being very early in the morning. So thanks very much for that. So the panel really is going to focus on some of the initiatives that folks are running within their organisations to help get more girls and women into tech. So this is a long-standing problem, and there is a lot of activity and positive impact in this space. So we thought a panel exploring some of the initiatives and how they're supported would be very useful. And so these are real world examples based on the panellists' own organisational interventions. So my first question really to my fellow panellists to open up the space for this discussion is around which initiatives have you got running that help engage girls and women into games or tech. And so we'll start off with Dominica, if that's okay.
Yes, okay. I will just say about a few initiatives, but I would like to start from some numbers because according to the Polish Agency for Enterprise Development, Poland is a relatively large video games market. We have about 420 game dev studios and 36 publishers operated in Poland last year, and we have also over 7,800 people work for game developers and publishers, and women make up a growing part of games industry workforce. So about 26% of workers in the gaming sector are women. It's very impressive. I'm very happy. Of course, there are more women in smaller companies employing up to 50%, because it's about 28 women in these companies. And over half women working for gaming sector are engaged directly in video games creation process. The rest work on supportive roles. And year-on-year increase in the employment of women is 11%. So it's really huge change these days. And key factor we can observe in the game programming education among young people is that Polish universities currently offer about 60 degrees courses related to game development, and over half of them educate programmers. So I think we are kind of country for programmers, and our association tries to support various educational initiatives related to programming. First, we cooperate strongly with National School for Programming for Children, and together we implemented last year the Learning by Playing campaign. And we also promote the participation of educational institutions in the European Coding Week. As you probably know, Code Week is organized by in October by the European Commission, and a lot of initiatives are organized locally. So last year, Poland won the competition because we had over 20,000 initiatives locally organized, and these are webinars and contests and tournaments and other online workshops. So I'm really very happy that we could encourage mostly schools to organize these events, because I believe that we have to start from young learners and young kids to encourage them to join our industry. I believe that without the involvement of teachers, Poland would not have achieved such a result in this competition.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dominika. That's really interesting, that kind of educational pipeline, to facilitate that workforce. So now if we head over to Sarah, do you want to maybe explain some of your initiatives?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ruth, and thank you, Dominika. And similarly at Amazon, the initiative I'm going to talk about is very much focusing on the younger generation. Now at Amazon Web Services, we launched a project 3 years ago called Get IT, essentially with an objective of kind of targeting a much kind of younger cohort of Year 8 students across the UK, with an objective of inspiring young girls to consider a career in technology. And so far, over 3 years, we've worked with around 25,000 students across 125 schools. And what we do as part of the initiative is we work with secondary schools, and we have around 20 ambassadors. These are women that work within Amazon who work with their local schools, and together we launch an inter-school competition where the schools, and it can be girls and boys, they design an app which would solve a problem within their community or their school. It could be perhaps litter or the environment. And very interestingly, this recent year, there were lots of focus around mental health as a result of the pandemic, which was really, really interesting, and some amazing ideas. I had the pleasure of being involved in one of the finals. And essentially all the schools that join the competition, we then decide 10 final schools. The schools then present, and ultimately we decide on a winning app. It's not the technical design; it's more the ideation of thinking about how technology could solve a problem. And so far so good for the UK. And then very excitingly, this year we also rolled the programme out to Ireland and to Germany with more schools planned. It's a really, really exciting initiative. There's lots of scope, and I think there's two things really. One area is exposing girls and young people to the idea of working in technology. So playing on Candy Crush, how can that relate to actually having a job one day in games and in technology? And I think the second area is, if you are a girl who is very technical and very interested in technology, to not feel that perhaps it's not something that a girl can do. There is very much a pathway. And I think what we've recognised is that by having women ambassadors within Amazon, it's so important to see a role model in the school, so that when we as ambassadors go into the school and they see a woman up there working in games, working in technology, it's very much kind of an inspiration to the young girls. So Ruth, that's a very high level as to what we're doing with Get IT.
Sounds like a great initiative, Sarah. So what age groups is the Get IT focused on?
At the moment, it's only year 8, so it's 12 to 13-year-olds, which we kind of recognise that kind of the earlier the better. That's the age that you think about your subjects for GCSEs and for A-levels. So to be there quite early on when you're thinking about your career.
That's great. Yeah, no, I was going to say that's perfect age. Okay, so lastly but not least, over to Michelle.
Yeah, similar to Sarah, I run our Women at Zynga STEAM outreach program. Women at Zynga is our employee resource group for women. And this program mission is to connect young women with professional role models and ultimately expose them to career options in the gaming industry, give them hands-on experience in some part of game development, as well as ultimately encourage them to explore STEAM studies. And so we do this by partnering with a number of nonprofits, we offer mentorship one-on-ones with students from elementary through college age. We also host professional panels where we do our best to get women professionals in front of the students and answering their questions, kind of like this, as well as offering presentations on what it's like to be game developer or even other parts of game industry careers, such as in legal or ad ops, like, all these different things you may not be aware of. Again, really focusing on that exposure. And finally, I think the kids enjoy this one the most is our workshops. We offer workshops to get that hands-on experience with game design and paper prototyping. And some of our more technical students actually will go through mobile game development, where they will get one-on-one guidance from our Zynga volunteers on how to develop their own mobile game. That's a little bit of a high level for me.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Michelle. And I guess from kind of my perspective, it picks up and is similar to a few of the initiatives that, you guys have spoken about. So at Abertay, we've run Dare Academy for schools. So that again is kind of a hands-on making experience where different children from different primary schools across Dundee would come and make a game or prototype a game, for example. Some other initiatives that we have also run are dedicated internships and sponsorships for female or underrepresented groups in, say, the Masters in AI programme, and of course gender fits with that. Typically similar to you, Michelle, also we've got role models. I think we're quite passionate about making sure that there's visibility of role models at all events that we do, from like marketing through to induction, open days, and actually within our teaching staff as well. So I think what's kind of been spoken about already is just kind of the breadth of some of the activities and the scale. So interestingly, from Dominica's point, I think that you've kind of got or talked a little bit about a national kind of intervention, aligned with the educational system. And then at AWS, you're really looking at trying to scale up that UK Get IT initiative, which is really great. So I guess I'm quite interested in asking each of you, why do you think these initiatives are important? And so, why are you doing them, I guess?
Well, I could jump in then.
Great stuff.
So, yeah, it's important because I'll share a quick anecdote for why I started our STEAM outreach program in 2017. To Sarah's point about, 8th grade being like a perfect opportunity to reach out to students, it was actually around 8th grade where I got exposure to this field trip. I happened to be tagging along my older brother on his high school field trip to a local community college. And in that community college, they told us more about how are CDs and silicon wafers made. And I don't make silicon wafers, but it was exciting to be exposed to that as a kid, to be like, oh, cool, that's how they turn sand into this. And the trip culminated in an exercise where we learned how to build a website. And I might be dating myself here, but for anybody who happens to remember GeoCities back in the day, where you could do a what you see is what you get, drag and drop GUI and make a website, that's what they showed us how to do. And that whole experience on that field trip really exposed me to tech I never knew about, as well as gave me that hands-on experience to build something from effectively nothing, right? And ultimately, it gave me the curiosity to see, what else could I learn and do in programming and web development, and something that I had previously never known about. So These words might sound familiar to you because it's also part of our mission in WAS Team Outreach, and that's why I wanted to create that experience. But instead of for web dev, open up to game development. So again, the goal would be to provide students the exposure to different career options and things that they may have never heard about, give them the hands-on experience that would give them a level of comfort as well as familiarity about the space, and ultimately encourage them for exploration where they could, if they wanted to have that curiosity and go explore it more, now they are more comfortable because they have had some previous experience with it prior.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, they are. All these initiatives are very important for women, but also they are very demanding because for me the main challenge is to meet the expectations of the industry, because game developers still complain about the lack of practical preparation of students. So many companies are offering workshops, trainings, and other forms of practical preparation to work for gaming sector. And I'm just starting the new project as well, and I started talks with the voluntary labor force regarding the project of professional activation of young women and preparing them for work in the video game sector. We are, of course, at the beginning of the road at the moment, but we are preparing the project of trainings and workshops and conferences during which the young women will learn directly from the gaming industry what forms of work are offered and how they can be involved in working in these sectors. So I hope that during the next conference I will be reported how the new project was implemented. So keep your fingers crossed for my new ideas.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dominica. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Ruth and Dominica. So I think for myself, very similar to Michelle, it's all around exposure. And I think what we've realised at Amazon is, trying to attract more diversity. I think we realised that there's just kind of a bit of a pipeline issue where kind of starting younger the better, so that girls are exposed to a career in games and careers in technology, and they know that these kind of pathways exist. And I think for me that there could be nothing worse than kind of a young girl being really interested in games or tech, but not seeing a way to get there, or not seeing herself doing a role or a job. And I think studies show that the most important aspect here is to create role models and to see somebody actually doing that job who they can relate to. So I think that's what we've kind of discovered with Get IT. And there's another aspect of Get IT. So as well as working with young girls and with the students, the ambassadors themselves, so the women at Amazon, they also undergo quite a lot of kind of public speaker training themselves to make sure that they can, I guess, relate to and present to the schools. So it's also very much, we're putting a lot of work and resources into women themselves within Amazon and helping their own personal development through the programme.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that's so important, that professional development. And I think also just like to pick up on kind of the pipeline issue that you mentioned. I guess from my perspective, one of the key things for us is kind of the underrepresentation of women in computer science. So if we look back to the year 2000, we had 9,825 students studying, computing or related subject at higher or standard grade in Scotland. Mm-hmm. And this year, 2020, that's 1,923. So there's been a real drop, in girl and female participation in that computing science subject area. And I think it's so important because a lot of the computing really shapes our world, and a lot of the solutions that we're faced with today, computing underpins everything from AI kind of user-focused solutions through to the metaverse solutions that we'll hear a little bit about later. So I think it's really important that women and girls are actually involved in making those solutions and have the capacity to do so. So I guess that's kind of the reason why I'm very interested in trying to get more girls and women studying games and computing. So moving on then, I guess the next kind of question we had was around, I think that hopefully there's folks sitting in the audience thinking, they'd like to maybe get involved in an initiative. So it would be good to explore maybe what some of the challenges that we've all faced in terms of initiating and sustaining the initiatives that we've kick-started, so that others can learn from our experiences. So over to, I'm just going to pick someone so there's no awkward pause. So Michelle, can I start with you about, sharing your experiences around any challenges that you've faced initiating and sustaining an initiative?
Yeah, certainly, Ruth. I'll point out 3 things that people should be aware of when you try to start this, especially when you're the first person starting it. The 3 things are going to be the time commitment involved, finding an executive champion, and ultimately getting volunteers to help out with the initiative if you're doing something similar to STEAM outreach or Get IT. So for us, when I talk about the time commitment, there's a lot of time that you're going to be spending with communicating with other nonprofit orgs, or even just internally among your volunteers, right? There's a lot of time commitment involved in planning, as well as understanding the legalities or securities that you might need to do. For example, when we had older students come to our office back when that was a thing prior to the COVID, we might have to have them fill out NDAs. And so understanding, what it is that your company is okay with doing there is key. And I think ultimately you want to build a committee, if possible, to help with you with the time commitment, because it is a lot of effort for one person to do on their own. But you need someone else to help you. And that's where the finding executive champion comes into play. The executive champion hopefully will be someone you can get within C-staff. I'm very fortunate that I've had, as part of our Women ERG, Women at Zynga, our chief legal officer, Fong Phillips, is my executive sponsor. And so she's the one who's advocating for our initiative and ultimately getting us funding, right? Because the funding is what's going to help us reach out to these students even more, as well as bringing awareness of this initiative to the other executives and senior leaders in our company. And so I think when you're looking for an executive champion, the best thing you can do on that is make it easy for them to help you and keep them informed about what's going on, right? Because that will ultimately enable them to help you as you help them, right? And the last thing I wanted to touch on is getting volunteers. I've found that, as you can imagine, if you're just trying to get only women professionals to talk on panels and stuff like that, you're going to probably end up running out of people until we hit the parity, right? You're going to probably end up running out of people and have to reuse several people. And so you don't want to burn out your volunteers, right? So you'll want to do what you can to actually encourage other potential volunteers who may not think that they are allowed in this space. I believe in one of the earlier segments about, should ERGs be an open or closed space? Some people may feel like, oh, it says women in the title of the ERG, so I don't identify as a woman. I can't participate in WA's STEAM outreach or Women at Zynga STEAM outreach. And that's not true. We need allies. We need other people who are here to help. And so making sure that potential volunteers know that this opportunity is open for everyone. And you don't have to be an engineer. For a long time, I had people think, oh, it's STEM outreach. I have to be an engineer. I can't be in, some other sector of the company. And that's not true. So again, reiterate to people, it's open to everyone. You don't have to be a specific role. If you are, that's great. Like, let's highlight that. But otherwise, really, it's to encourage people that it doesn't have to always just be women tech people, right? It could be someone in HR, someone in people ops. It's fine because, again, for us, it's to be ultimately exposing people to the many career options, not just the tech career. Although ideally, we would like you to go explore more tech. I also think, real quick, to end the note here. Encourage other fellow ERGs and to likewise reciprocate to come participate. You would be surprised at how much more reach you can get if you, again, going back to building a committee to help you figure out how you can reach and get the word out more.
Great stuff. And just a quick follow-up, what's ERG?
Oh yeah, ERG stands for Employee Resource Group. This is, I guess, maybe oversimplifying it, but when I talk to students, they're like, what is an ERG? I usually tell students it's kind of like a club, a club focused on a special interest that, everyone in that club cares about. But again, that's an oversimplification of it.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, and very insightful comments there. Thanks, Michelle. So over to you, Sarah. Can you follow up on that, please?
Yeah, sure. So just listening to Michelle, and it's just kind of made me think with Get IT, which is 3 years old now, I'm still continue to be blown away by the amount of, I guess, passion and support for the programme. And that's not just women. So plenty of male allies across Amazon, across our kind of customer base. It's just a great kind of, it feels more than a programme. It's a momentum, I think, and not just across Amazon. So to your question, Ruth, around some of the challenges, I think without stating the obvious, one has definitely been, I guess, dealing with the pandemic. So when I started as an ambassador for the programme 3 years ago, I had the luxury of obviously travel and meeting with the students, meeting with the fellow ambassadors. And, unfortunately, we've not had the option to do that throughout the pandemic. So that's definitely been, I would say, more challenging. I think that especially with young people, I think obviously it's still possible, but I just don't feel you get the same energy or buzz when you're talking to a school, with lots of students online versus being in the room with them, and just, I guess, getting the energy from each other. So that's definitely been a challenge. Hopefully things will start to improve. And I think the challenge I would talk about for the future is kind of what's next. So, if we achieve our objective and we inspire 12 to 13-year-old girls to consider a career in games, then how do we keep that momentum going, and how do we keep that connection? We need to make sure that it's not just a one-off program, and we contain and carry on with the passion and inspiring. So that's something I've not got a solution for right now, but that's just something that we're continuing to think about what's next for the program.
Yeah, I think great stuff. Thank you, Sarah. I think, the comments on kind of allyship is really important, and it kind of speaks to Michelle's point about getting as many people involved in the initiative as well. And I think that kind of self-organisation and self-sustaining initiative is a challenge, but I'm sure that there are ways that we can do that. And I think collaboration is key for that too. So over to Dominika now.
We also support students, and we support a nationwide programming competition for students. And for many years, my association is a partner of this competition, and I'm a jury member. So we help young people to establish contacts with companies, with the gaming industry, which is very valuable and important for them. But for me, the main challenge is, I think, staff shortages, and it's still present in some specializations like programming you mentioned before, and animation, production, graphics, etc., etc. So there is still a lot of work to do, and I think that the main challenge is, from my point of view, that gaming industry cannot do everything by itself. So I see the problem in lack of public support, and we are constantly complaining that more schools are needed to educate specialists for professionals in the gaming industry and technology in general.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you, Dominika. And I can kind of see and sympathise with that kind of, you kind of do need some kind of orchestrated perspective to drive this change from primary schools through to secondary schools and the other pathways. I think there are alternative pathways to get more girls and women into tech and games as well. So I think the next question I kind of had, and it wasn't on our list to kind of discuss, but it's kind of emerged from our discussion. So I think it would be interesting to maybe hear some reflections around, some of these initiatives that you've been describing. How have they really changed an individual? Have you had any feedback from participants that have been on your initiatives where they've given some positive feedback and it's kind of changed their thinking or their career aspirations? We didn't really kind of say we were going to talk about this, but I think it, based on what we have chatted about, it'd be good to hear, if you do have any inside information on that.
I'm happy to talk a little bit. I don't have any kind of first-hand, I'd say life-changing anecdotes. Hopefully that will come. But I can just talk a little bit first-hand when I was an ambassador in 2019 on the programme, and just some of the memories I have was we actually hosted some of the students at one of our offices, and I just remember these kind of beaming smiles of kind of, 30, 40 girls kind of coming into the Amazon office, and just thinking back kind of, I wish I could have had that opportunity at 12 or 13 years old. And then the same thing again, we actually hosted the finalists at the London Excel at our Amazon kind of London Summit, which is pre-COVID, was one of our biggest events. And we had all the finalists, the young girls on the stage. So again, it was just kind of memories that will stay with me forever, just so kind of inspiring for these young girls to have the opportunity, just something I would have loved to have done. So just a bit of an insight there.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, to continue on that, I think it's a great question, Ruth, and I think it's something I want to highlight, which is people will probably expect like, hey, you're doing this program, so we need to see an immediate result. And I want to remind people that, for me, I got exposed to something in 8th grade. It wasn't until way after college that I got into industry, right? And so you won't see that immediate result. However, in our program, we also conduct student surveys where we'll ask them, hey, like, how do you think about this? What would you like to, what would be helpful for you to go forward? Things like that. So we do get roughly like 85% people say like, this made a big difference. I want to go, look into more STEAM studies. I never knew about this stuff, right? Because previously they were like, oh, science, not for me or whatever. And it's like, well, no, like I can see how I can apply math now to do some cool rotations in this game animation or what have you. And I think that when it comes to, the other question you had, Ruth, which is what's something firsthand I've seen. Again, another anecdote, but firsthand in one of the hackathons, I went to go give, our Unity workshop about how to make games in Unity so that these students could learn how to make their own game in this short time in a hackathon, like 24 hours. I actually had one student there. She wasn't doing well in her classes, but she was encouraged to come to this hackathon. And when she went to this program and she learned how to actually make a game in VR, like very simple game, but she put it out there. And now she, when we talked with her, she was like, oh, your encouragement really reminded me I could do this, like I felt like I wasn't doing it well because my grades were suffering, and now I actually can do this. And she took a little bit of a break, but she came back and she finished schooling, and she actually went to go do VR for NASA for a bit, right?
Okay.
Like, so that is impressive, right? Like it's kind of like that starfish story, but like, it's those moments you live for, right?
That's an amazing story. Thanks very much, Michelle, for sharing that. Great stuff. Picking up on maybe something that Sarah mentioned, and we didn't really anticipate talking about this either, was the impact of COVID. So Sarah said that you had to change some of the way the delivery model, I guess, of some of the Get IT workshops. I wonder how Michelle and Dominica, you also managed to navigate that terrain. And we'll kick off with Dominica. I guess how has your initiatives been impacted by COVID?
Last year, we started the initiative entitled Learning by Playing, as I said, and it was directed to teachers of primary schools mostly. And unfortunately, we started that in February, and 1 month later we had to stop because we planned a lot of workshops for teachers to encourage them to start coding lessons at schools. And unfortunately, we had to change our plans, and I had to record some remote trainings, etc. And I also discovered the lack of knowledge about the remote learning, because nobody was prepared for this kind of work, especially in schools. So as an association, we prepared a special chapter for teachers to inform about the possible usage of various interactive tools in remote learning for younger kids. There were some programs and video games or platforms. So the special chapter was very, very popular, and we also established a cooperation with the Ministry of Education, which was interested in our program, and they sent all the materials prepared by our association to the schools and to the local coordinators of education. So that was the good beginning of our public cooperation with the Ministry of Education, and I hope we will continue this year again, because I'm just preparing the video games in schools handbook for teachers, the Polish language version, in cooperation with Interactive Software Federation of Europe and European Schoolnet Academy. So I hope we will have new good project for teachers this year.
That sounds like that would have been an invaluable resource for teachers, to have that information about how to pivot to online. I know that, across the board, across the sectors, it was a very difficult time for everyone. So I think this also shows the value of these networks and being able to develop resources that can be shared more broadly and widely where we can. Michelle, did you want to say anything about how, the interventions, how they pivoted to online and what the imaginative solutions that you came up with for that?
Yeah, so being online has been a little bit rough from the get-go, because we were initially so used to doing kind of what Sarah was mentioning, having the students come to our actual site and getting them excited, and things like our paper prototyping is a little bit more difficult now because we can't actually provide them the paper and markers, right? We have to hope that they have the resources, which maybe not all students can have, right? So understanding that, how can we help that out? And, is there something we can sponsor or send to them so they could have that available? I did want to touch on a point that Dominika made about, how can students be even prepared, outside of, or prepared so that they are ready to come into industry. Mm-hmm. And we also have worked with a nonprofit to do what we call a teacher externship. So this is something where our Zingite volunteers will meet with teachers in the local community and tell them about, here's how I do my job, here's things that were valuable to me. And the teachers use that feedback to update their curriculum and share with the students so that they can better prepare them. And so a lot of our focus, since the pandemic has been, how can we, broaden our outreach? I will say the one good thing about the pandemic is previously STEAM outreach from Women at Zynga has been located primarily inside of the San Francisco Bay Area, because that's where I'm based out of. But because of the pandemic, I've actually been able to enlist the support of ambassadors in our other Women at Zynga studios and have them, start their own chapters inside of our Austin's studio, as well as Toronto and Bengaluru and India. And that has been tremendous in, broadening our outreach to be global. So I think that leveraging the technologies of, Teams or in our case, Zoom, that kind of stuff really enables us to have a broader outreach, as well as, I'm here, right? Like, that's something I wouldn't have been able to do if I had to, maybe get on a plane and fly over. So I do think there's some advantages to it. However, understanding, I do want to be, cognizant that understanding not all students may have access. And so how can you help them have that kind of access?
Yeah, that's a really, really important point, actually, Michelle. So I think, we're nearly out of time, folks. I've thoroughly enjoyed discussing, the panel topic with you folks. I think we maybe have time just for one last word of advice. So it's basically two or three words that you would give to anyone that wanted to run an initiative.
Just do it.
Just do it. That's a good one. Anything different?
I'd say be bold and follow your passion.
Great stuff, Sarah. And I think we're going to be out of time, so we're going to end it there, folks. So thanks very much. We're going to wrap up here. I hope you stay tuned for the next talks coming up, and I'll see you all around. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.